morning, students. This side Dipendu Bhandari, your mentor of physics, and today we are going to discuss about the chapter laws of motion. So, to know the laws of motion, you have to be familiar with the terms uniform motion, non-uniform motion, velocity, acceleration, and you have read this all in previous classes. So we'll directly move towards the examples of some of these, like just you can see in your screen where it is written, to move a football at rest someone must have to kick it, okay, or you can say to throw a stone upwards one has to give it an upward push, okay. Or another example, it is written here that a boat moves in a flowing river without anyone rowing it, and how it is possible? With the help of wind, okay. A boat is flowing in a river with the help of wind without anyone rowing it. So all the above examples, what you can conclude? What is common in all the above examples? Anyone can say it in comments. The common here in all the examples is an external agency is required to move the body, or you can say to displace a body. When you are kicking a football at rest, it displaces its position, okay. When you are kicking a football at rest, it displaces its position. When a boat is flowing in the river with the help of wind, it displaces its position. So what are the external agencies here? Here in case of boat, wind is an external agency which is giving it a push, or you can say giving it a force. Wind is the force which is helping the boat to move from to displace its position. Same in case of football, when someone kicking it, he or she is giving a force on the football or giving a push on the football. So here the external, so we can conclude from this that an external agency is required to move a body or to displace a body. And another important thing is that this external agency may or may not be in contact with the body. Here you can see in case of bar magnet, okay, getting my point? This external agency may or may not be in contact with the body. As in case of bar magnet, it can attract an iron nail from a distance. So without touching the nail, it can move the nail, or it can attract the nail towards itself, okay. So I think up to this it is clear to you. Now moving forward, you all have heard about Aristotle. I think you all have heard about Aristotle. So he has given one law. What is that? Here it is written, an external force is required to keep a body in motion. An external force is required to keep a body in motion. It is the law given by Aristotle, okay. So there is a flaw in his law. What is that? Can anyone tell me? What is that? What is the flaw in Aristotle's law? He forgot to mention about the opposing forces. And what are the opposing forces? The forces which opposes a or you can say an opposite force. When a football is moving in this direction, an opposing force is reacting on it in the opposite direction. Here when the football is moving in this direction, the opposing force is acting in this direction, in opposite side, okay. So these opposing forces, Aristotle forgot to mention these opposing forces. And what are these? These are what? These are friction in case of solid. And what are the opposing forces says in case of fluids? What are the opposing forces in case of fluids? The opposing forces in case of fluids, what is it? It is viscous. So Aristotle forgot to mention the opposing forces, which is friction in case of solid and another one is viscous in case of fluids. So due to these opposing forces, an external force is required to keep a body in motion, and if there is no opposing forces, then no external force is required to keep the body in uniform motion. Okay, you are getting my point? These opposing forces are applied, that's why an external force is required to keep the body in uniform motion. If there is no opposing forces, then no external force is required. Next, now here, due to this flaw, Galileo started doing some experiments. What are his experiments? Galileo started doing some experiments and he concluded that motion of objects, I am coming to the experiments later on. After first I need to tell you what he concluded. So Galileo concluded that after doing some of the experiments, that the motion that an object moving in a frictionless horizontal plane, just mark my words, frictionless horizontal plane, an object moving on a frictionless horizontal plane neither have acceleration nor retardation. Aristotle didn't say these words. Okay, so Galileo after his experiments concluded that an object moving on a frictionless horizontal plane neither have acceleration nor retardation. Okay, it will move in a constant velocity. And what are the experiments done by Galileo? These are the experiments. Here are the pictures of some of the experiments that are done by Galileo. Okay, first of all, he has done the experiment, that is, he has taken a ball and observed its motion on an inclined plane, where first here you can see that the ball is moving from upwards to downwards and the ball is in acceleration. In the next picture you can see that the ball is moving from downwards to upwards, means it is in retardation. And in the third one, he observed the motion of a ball in an horizontal plane. Okay, so not only this, he again started doing experiments, and in the next experiment he has taken a double inclined plane. You can see here from the picture, he has taken a double inclined plane where a ball releases from rest of one of the planes, rolls down and climbs at the other end. So when a ball releases from one of the end, it rolls down and climbs at the other end. Ball rolls down from one of the end and climbs at the other end. If these planes are smooth, then the initial height of the ball will be equal to the final height of the ball. Getting my point? If this plane is smooth, then the initial height of the ball will be equal to the final height of the ball. Now in the second situation, he has taken a double inclined plane again, but here the slide is slightly decreased. Here the slope is slightly decreased. In the second case, here he has taken a slope where the end of the slope is slightly decreased. Now the ball will still reach the same height. If the slope is smooth, then the ball will still reach the same height and it will travel a longer distance. So Galileo from this concluded, from all these experiments, Galileo concluded that an object moving on a frictionless horizontal plane neither have acceleration nor retardation. neither Galileo concluded that an object neither have acceleration nor retardation on a frictionless horizontal plane. It will move with a constant velocity. Okay, getting my point? Now, from this Galileo's ideas, Newton laid the foundation of mechanics in terms of three laws, which are known as laws of motion, which is the name of our today's topic or today's chapter, laws of motion. From these Galileo's ideas, Newton laid the foundation of mechanics, and in terms of three laws which are known as laws of motion. And the first law of motion is, if every body continues to be its state of uniform motion or rest until and unless an external force is applied on it, which are Galileo's experiments, which Galileo have said or Galileo have concluded. From that ideas, Newton laid the foundation of mechanics, and he says the first law of motion, that every body continues to be its state of rest or motion until and unless an external force is applied on it. This is also known as, this also as law of inertia. Yes or no? Here it is written everything. It is written here everything. On your screen you can see it, that this Newton's first law of motion is also known as law of inertia. Okay? Now, moving on. To know about the second law of motion, first you have to know about the term momentum. What is momentum? Which is defined as the product of mass and velocity, and it is denoted by the P. Here you can see is written. Sorry, the fonts are so small that I think you can't see it, but next time I will make it bigger. Okay, so coming to the topic, to know the second law of motion, you have to know about the term momentum. So what is momentum? Momentum is defined as the product of mass and velocity, and momentum is denoted by P, by the letter P. Okay, so now let me give you some of the examples so that it will be clear for you. Okay, so now suppose there is a car and a truck. Okay, we all know that truck is heavy than car. So to move a car, we have to put a greater force, or the greater force is required to push a truck than the car, to bring the two objects, to bring the car and the truck at the same speed at the same time, at the same speed in same time, to move to keep a truck and a car at the same speed in same time, we have to put a greater force on the truck than the car. Okay, it is clear? Now again, let me give you another example. Let us take two stones. Okay, one is heavy and the other is light. Okay, if both are dropped from the top of the building, one stone is heavy and one stone is light, both are dropped from the top of the building, we know that the heavy one will touch the ground first. So from here we can conclude that mass is an important factor which determines the force in a motion. Mass of a body is an important factor because the heavy stone is touching the ground first. So mass is a very important factor that determines the force in a motion. Okay, now I think another example will be much better to you. That is, suppose a cricketer catches a ball. When a cricketer catches a ball, if the ball is coming at a fair speed, at a slower speed, then he will catch it easily, and it will make no hurt to his hands. But if a ball is coming at a greater speed towards him, then what will have to do? If he tries to stop the ball, it will hurt his hand. So a cricketer, what he does, he pull his hands backwards. To stop the ball, he pull his hands backwards. Okay, mark my point, mark my words, students. If a cricketer wants to catch the ball coming towards him at a slower pace, then he don't have to pull his hand backwards, because it will not hurt his hand so much. But if a ball is coming towards him at a greater pace, then he will have to pull his hands backwards. Okay, so from here what we are getting, from here, what is the conclusion? Here the conclusion is that velocity is also necessary for the change in momentum, which depends on force. Okay, so velocity is also necessary. From here we get the conclusion that velocity is also necessary for the change in momentum, which again depends on force. Okay, so for the momentum of a body, okay, mass and velocity both are important factors, which again depends on force. This is the product of mass and velocity. What we know here, what we know, what product of mass and velocity, product of mass and velocity, it is P, momentum, product of mass and velocity is momentum P. So mass and velocity, if both are important factors for the change in momentum, then the change in momentum also depends on force. How the change in momentum also depends on force? I will give you another example. What is that? Suppose you have a stone. Okay, you have a stone and you tied a string on the stone, and the end of the string is in your hand. Okay, now you are rotating the stone like in this way. Okay, with the help of your hand, and the stone is in circular motion. One end of the string is in your hand, another end of the string you are tied with a stone, and you are moving your hand in this manner, and you can see that the stone is moving in a circular motion. Okay, the stone is moving in a circular motion. So what do you conclude from this? That force is necessary. We are giving the force with the help of our hand, and the stone is changing its direction, and not only direction, it's also changing its momentum, direction of momentum. Okay, the stone is moving in a circular motion, and in a circular motion the stone continuously changing its direction, changing its direction of momentum. Okay, and by how? By we are giving a force with the help of our hand. That's why it is changing the direction of momentum. So from this observation led Newton to the second law of motion. This observation led to the second law of motion. Okay, this observation led to the second law of motion. And what is that? That here the rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the applied force, and it takes place in the direction in which the force is applied. Getting my point? This observation led to the second law of motion, that is rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the applied force, and the applied force will take place in the direction in which the force acts. Okay, so now we know force is direct, as we have said, rate of change of momentum. Rate of change of momentum means, what is rate of change of momentum? Rate of change of momentum means here P. Rate of change of momentum means P, and this P is rate. And here what is rate of change? Rate of change means according to time interval. So rate of change of momentum dp by dt we can say, and it is directly proportional to the force, which means force is directly proportional to dp by dt. Force is directly proportional to dp by dt. Now we all have known in the previous classes that to change a proportionality sign to the equal to sign, we have to keep a constant. We have to take a constant. So here the constant is k. Here we are taking the constant as k. So we can say that f equals to k dp by dt. Okay. Now from previous slides, we have know that p equals to mv. Here we are getting p equals to mv. Okay, so dp by dt we can write in place of p mv. Okay, so we can write k d mv by dt. Okay, now when we are doing experiment with an object. Every object has a constant mass, okay, not constant, we say fixed mass. Every object has a fixed mass, so we can take mass as a constant, okay. Every object has a fixed mass, so mass can be taken as constant, so we can write k m dv by dt, and dv by dt we know dv by dt is equals to a. Here dv by dt is equals to a, so we can also write f equals to k m a, which is, this equation can also be written, this equation will also be known as second law of motion. First equation is here, f equals to k dp by dt, and from this we have derived f equals to kma, okay. So this equation can also be written as Newton's second law of motion. You have to keep in mind that when you are writing this second law of motion, you have to write this word, rate of change of momentum. It's very important, students, it's very important. The rate of change of momentum is very important. You have to write it, otherwise your marks can be deducted. So the rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the applied force, and you have to also write that it takes place in the and the applied force is this takes place in the direction in which the force acts. The rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the applied force and takes place in the direction in which the force acts, okay. So now the last one is Newton's third law of motion. It is familiar to all of you. Newton's third law of motion, you are reading it from class 9 only, but then also I will tell you what is Newton's third law of motion. You all know that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It is written here, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, okay. Here the term action and reaction means nothing. Action and reaction, nothing else but only force. We are talking about here force, so action and reaction means nothing, that only force. Force always occur in pairs, okay. Force always occur in pairs, action and reaction, okay. You are getting my point, or you are familiar with this third law of motion, okay. So every action has an equal and opposite reaction, okay. So I think, students, you all have understood today's lesson very well, okay. I will see you again tomorrow. Thank you all for joining here. Thank you. Bye bye.